All right. Testing, testing. Today on Quality Time with Family Ties, we learn about art time lovers. Whenever you're ready.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Family Time. I'll try that again.
Take two.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Quality Time with Family Ties. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Pepper. I am here cross-country with Paul Packler from lovely New York.
You know what? This feels so much better. Being in
the same room.
Tension was just way too much between the three of us.
Well, it's Scott, because he's hot as a pistol.
Yeah, he's got that beard. He's got that dad energy. He's got that dad bod.
He's so hot that he couldn't be with us today. Now, are we clear on what this was today? This wasn't, he didn't pull out Maisie or Henry.
No, but I think that's underlying. I think at this point, Scott's just going to constantly be like, helicoptering in to Quality Time.
Well, it clearly wouldn't have gotten done unless we did it by ourselves this week.
Right. We should start bringing in guest hosts.
He'll feel bad. Scott will feel bad.
Oh, that'll be good. I think going forward, this could be the new thing of just guilting him until finally he comes back.
Yeah. You know what would be really good? We could guilt him if there was a good episode of Family Ties. Say, hey, Scott, this is a really good episode. You're going to want to watch it. This wasn't it. But,
yeah, no, this was a nice return to mediocrity.
Yes, it was. It was a very comfortable return to mediocrity. In fact, it was so comfortable to me that this episode seemed like it was already done 2 or 3 times on the show.
Yeah, I feel like maybe like an analogous plot of someone comes in and falls in love with whichever guy you want to pick. Because I feel like they didn't do this with the women.
We've already had the Alec and an older woman plot.
Oh God, the terrible Lorraine.
Right. So we have Nick and an older woman plot. And this time we get to see it through Mallory's jealous eyes, her green jealous eyes that they sort of force upon her for no reason.
For no reason. And do nothing with it.
Absolutely. It's for no reason.
Yeah.
There's not a reason in hell she should be jealous.
No. That was, I think, the most interesting part of this whole episode. Yeah. But this episode, if you're playing along, is season 4, episode 20, because last week we did that 2-part. And so the way that IMDb and Wikipedia count it, this is episode 20. Get that right, Barbara and Brian. Art lover. So wow. We start the whole thing with Stephen and Elise in the kitchen, and they are going through different paintings of artwork, right?
Yes, they are. And Stephen's identifying the paintings until we get to the painting that we will now know as Foreclosing on a Farm, which is a 5-year-old painting of Alex's of a bank foreclosing on a farm and putting up an eviction notice.
But it's animals playing the part of the bank. So it's like an Animal Farm where it's already the end of the thing, but instead of becoming communists, they're all 80s yuppies.
Mm-hmm.
Corey, let me ask you this. Have you ever taken an art appreciation course?
In college, I did, yes.
What'd you think of that?
I actually enjoyed my art appreciation class. I thought it taught me a lot.
What eras did you?
Oh, everything. It was like slides every week. It was like a different era every class, and then you'd come in and they would just show slides and talk about the era.
Right. I read that Steve Martin novel that he had written. What was it? That art one that came out like a few years ago.
I don't know what it is.
It's like after Shop Girl, he was like, I need to write another novel about a young woman in her early 20s who an old guy comes along and pays for everything and then fucks her.
So he wrote the same book twice?
Exactly. And this one's all about his obsession with art. And It was so terrible that I didn't finish it.
Oh my God. Really, Steve Martin striking out on something is very rare.
Very rare. I've read everything he's written, and it's always great. This is the first time. The art made me think of that.
Yep. And speaking of art, we are introduced very quickly to Victoria Van Herstenberg or Victoria Herstenberg?
Herstenberg. It was, for no reason, a very complicated and difficult to remember name.
And she appears of course, they talk about Victoria Hurstenberg is coming by to pick up the paintings for the TV station's art auction.
I don't know why that is, because then when we fast forward to the auction, she has nothing to do with like presenting them.
No, nothing to do with it. But she appears to be, well, and this is what's weird. She appears to be at first like the art patron of Ohio.
Yes, she is.
And
go ahead.
I can't imagine there being more than one art patron of Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you need, right?
Seems that way, and yet I wrote, I mentioned it later on, and so it must have been something that spurred it later on, but we can talk about it now. It's like Gary David Goldberg loves to pretend that Dayton is as intellectual as New York and Los Angeles. Now, I, having only lived in New York and Los Angeles, I certainly am egotistical about the fact that New York and Los Angeles are a bit more erudite than the rest of the country. And I think that's unfair to the rest of the country because I think there is art in the rest of the country. There are art patrons in the rest of the country. But I'm not really sure there's that many art galleries in Dayton. And Victoria seems to be taking to Nick to a different art opening every night for 2 weeks. Where are they? Soho? I mean, really, it's ridiculous. I don't believe that there are 14 art galleries in Dayton, Ohio for Victoria Hurstenberg to schlep Nick to.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest problems with this episode is the reality that they, for some reason, do a time jump midway through the episode saying that Nick and Victoria have been hanging out for 11 days and
Yes.
Mallory has not seen him once because
that's what he's saying.
She has been feting him all over town.
And then he says in the next scene, "Oh, I really appreciate you taking me to art openings every single night." So that's where they've been, and I don't buy it.
Not for a second. I don't buy much from this episode.
No, and that's it. And when she appears, when Victoria Hurstenberg finally appears, and I sort of kind of see what they pictured, and they picture everyone who's an art patron wearing fur coats.
Mm-hmm.
Like fur. They care. If you love art, you care nothing for animals. Is that something that they, or in those days, fur didn't necessarily mean you didn't give a rat's ass about animals. It was a sign of elegance. So the words that Mallory uses in the second act: elegant, sophisticated, smart.
I guess she doesn't. Yeah, I would have cast somebody else in this role.
It seems like a put on to me. It sounds like she's putting it on.
Yeah. This woman that's playing the role, Corey, I looked her up. Her name is Christine Belford.
Right.
And she grew up in Amityville, Long Island. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Because what's the one thing you know about Amityville? Well, it turns out on Wikipedia it says she once lived at 112 Ocean Avenue, the location which later became famous as the setting for the Amityville Horror for about 5 years, from age 11 until age 16.
She lived in the Amityville Horror House. Yeah, I grew up in the Amityville Horror House. It was a good childhood.
So weird. So, but she's like, an actress. She did tons of TV from the 70s through about the 90s type thing. But she's not that great.
No, she shows up and she really likes Nick's art. By the way, she's not the only one who likes Nick's art. I love the way they make fun of that first piece that Nick brings in to contribute to the station auction, and It's actually quite a nice piece. I like it a lot myself, actually.
Because I hated the first one, and then I thought when he brought in like the half a dozen other ones, I thought there was some really cool ones in there. But the first one I didn't like.
I sort of like junk. I like junkyard kind of sculptures. I think they're sort of interesting. My ex-brother-in-law has made a lifetime of not only sculpting junkyard things, but teaching sculpting junkyard things. He taught it at the Tufts, at the, Rhode Island School of Design. He taught sculpture.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you talked about him in a past episode, I think, about like a gift that he gave Griffin, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, art.
Yeah.
So when I see Nick's art, it's like, oh, it's reminiscent of my former brother-in-law Danny's. It was very good. I sort of liked those stuff. It was interesting.
Now, here's the thing that surprised me, or that I always think is weird, is that when Nick brought it out, this is art, Corey. It's all subjective, dude.
Mm-hmm.
But when Nick takes the sculpture to show what he's bringing to the auction for Steven's TV network, Steven and Elise and the audience all laugh at how terrible it is. And it's like, don't you think that Steven and Elise being hippies, they would be a little bit more cool about found art? But like, they're very reactionary about it.
Very judgmental. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This scene ends real weirdly. It just sort of ends.
What happens? What's the
line about no bozo off the street? I wouldn't just pull some bozo off the street.
Oh, right. And this is the other thing that I was going to bring up. When Victoria sees Nick's art, she loves it. And then she asks, "Who did this?" And Nick's like, "Oh, it was me." But then he's like talking to Mallory instead of like, you know, if he's an aspiring artist, when someone with this clout appreciates his work, he doesn't seem to really care about Victoria at all. Like, he's not like, "Oh, I better negotiate or do some networking or anything." He's just like, "I'm a big dumb idiot."
And once again, very disrespectful to Nick. And you'd think that Mallory would have caught on almost immediately what was happening. And and it's so long for it to dawn upon Mallory what was going on.
Yeah, very much, because it's very obvious to everyone in the room, in space. Everyone sees this.
They're playing it obvious. It was written obvious. And there's another way that I just feel that they're sort of disrespectful to the Mallory character. They're so intent upon her being just slightly dullard, slightly dumb, that she doesn't catch this. And you can catch. You know, we've met Victoria Hurstenberg's, aren't she? Sounds like she smokes like 6 packs of cigarettes a day. She's got that, oh, Nick, it's so nice to see you. Your art is so fascinating. And you can sort of tell right away that she's going to come on to him. She's already coming on to him.
Right, right. And so we fast forward, the next scene is the auction at the network. We've seen this set before. And Steven is selling Alex's horsey ducky painting.
And Steven, once again, the station manager, acting as the station's host on camera.
Just jack of all trades. we should have kept a running tally of every job that
Steven does at the station. My God.
Yeah. That's the picture that, because we didn't really get to see it in the first scene. We finally get to see Alex's artwork. It reminds me of Daniel Johnston's artwork. Do you know him, that musician guy?
I don't.
Okay, it's just really raw and weird. He's mentally ill and blah blah blah. But yeah.
Well, you notice Nick comes in and he's showing off his sculpture. Do you ever notice it may have been a fashion thing from 30 years ago. His shirts are tucked in and his pants are up too high and he sort of looks porky and he's not.
No. It's that high-waisted thing always makes you look like you're a boxer, like an old-timey boxer or something.
It does weird things to where it cuts his body, and it makes him look weird and barrel-chested, and I don't think he is any of those things. And yet I know it's probably just a fashion thing of the time that it's coming out of a let's get physical, like that 70s or the 80s thing.
Doesn't he wear, like, belts around his shirt, too? Isn't that a thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're putting Nick's auction piece up for auction, and in a moment that I thought was sort of comical, the second they put Nick's artwork up for auction, the phones stop ringing completely.
Yeah. Like all great artists, Nick Moore is ahead of his time.
Absolutely. And everybody watching stops calling. It's like, nope, not it. They're all sitting there, not with the phones not ringing. And then finally a bid comes in for $220. And who made the bid but Victoria Hurstenberg?
Now, what's amazing is she apparently made the call, but then we like pan the camera to the left and she's standing there.
Without a cell phone because they haven't been invented yet.
Right.
So maybe she didn't make the call. Maybe she handed Steven a piece of paper with her bid on it.
That could be.
She tells Nick that she's got a good eye for unsung talent. And she wants that sculpture something fierce.
Yeah, I drew a picture myself. I did some artwork of in watching this repartee between the two of them, I drew a face throwing up.
Well, I'm glad to know that this art can inspire other young artists to create.
I know, I'd never done that before in watching all of these episodes of Family Ties, but I felt the spark of artistry coming out of me.
So you drew a picture of yourself throwing up. We cut from this scene back to the living room to what apparently is our B plot. Another one of those surprise B plots that sort of sneaks up on you. It's like, wow, I didn't realize this was the B plot of the show.
The B is for bite you in the ass when you weren't expecting.
Yes. Wow. This is all about a painting of dogs playing poker.
All right, Corey. So I was like, gotta figure out something cool to tell these listeners about. The famous dogs playing poker were created by Cassius Marcellus Coolidge, who grew up, he was born in 1844, and he died in 1934, and he painted how many? Like 19 different versions of dogs playing poker, I think.
In his 90 years of life, this dude painted 14 different versions of dogs playing poker?
Wait, yeah, no, the series of 16 commissioned paintings and their themes are, and then it gives a list of all these different poker dog things.
I don't know who's I feel sadder for, the person who did all the painting or the people who researched all the painting.
I know there's a lot of stuff. He was born to abolitionist Quaker farmers, 20 years before the Civil War, and then went on to do a bunch of stuff.
Wow. So they seem to be setting up more of Nick's arc because is this where Victoria wants to see? Oh, is this where? No, this isn't where Victoria wants to see Nick's stuff yet, is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's later too, but yeah, this is the part where he and Mallory are bringing in all those like half a dozen different artworks because she wants to see them and buy them all up.
And Jennifer is scared of one of those pieces.
Yeah, that was annoying. It's like, why weird art is so funny to this 80s audience.
I know, and it's like, and you're going to use the word scared? What about it could scare you, Jennifer? You seem like a tough little girl.
Yeah. It just, things that are weird are funny. I don't know.
And so she shows up, she shows up in some outfit with a plunging back, and it was sequins on it. It's like a long evening gown, and she's like standing there right in front of Mallory, practically, licking Nick's face.
Yeah, isn't this the scene where they're both holding Nick's hands at the same time?
Exactly. It's that shot that they loved where Mallory is holding Nick's hand on one side and Victoria can't quite see it, and then she grabs his hand on the other side, and there's sort of a pained look on Nick's face of both of them holding his hands.
It's just ridiculous because it's not realistic. It's just so stagey, and all of the characters are dumber because none of them are talking about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And it all seemed to revolve around this incredibly vital art world of Ohio, which I don't mean to cast aspersions upon Ohio, although after this most recent election, I probably could cast aspersions upon Ohio.
Sure.
Amongst other states. But I just can't see them having a vital art world in Dayton. And yet this is what we're being led to believe. There is one little funny line about, I would love to be your patron. And Nick says, and I would love to be patronized.
It's a good joke. Good joke.
It's a good joke. I thought, okay, that's sort of a turning word, and it has a totally different meaning when used that way. So I thought that was sort of cute. And that's really sort of where we leave the first act.
Yeah. Oh, there's also the moment when he calls her Mrs. Hurstenberg, and she's like, "It's Miss, I'm not married." And that was like, no shit.
Yes, exactly. It's like I thought Mallory was going to melt like the Wicked Witch of the West.
Right.
That's the whole purpose of that line, was to sort of give us a reaction shot of Mallory of, oh, this is my worst fear come true.
Yeah. So on that note,
I'm going to lose my boyfriend to a 45-year-old art patron. Take a break.
Yeah, let's take a break. We'll be right back. And we're back.
No, I can't believe it. I'm going to lose him. I'm going to lose Nick to Victoria Hurstenberg.
Wow, you just kept that emotion going from before the commercial. It was just like a soap opera.
You know, when I'm into it, and I'm feeling Mallory's pain. I think
the Daytime Emmy goes to Corey Pepper for his performance of Mallory Keaton.
She looked cute in this episode.
She did. Okay, Corey, let's talk about that. Nick, he's not my type. He's not cute. I don't think that Scott Valentine is an attractive dude. I don't think Victoria Hurstenberg is attractive either. This is like a sexy episode where neither of the people are that attractive.
I don't mind Scott Valentine. I obviously, we all in retrospect have problems with the mullet.
Yeah.
I think if he didn't have the mullet, which was probably age appropriate for the time, if he didn't have the mullet, maybe I could consider him a little bit more attractive. He's not, but once again, what they're doing with his body is ridiculous with those clothing, with like the workout clothes they keep on putting him in.
It's weird. It's very weird.
Mm-hmm.
But Hurstenberg, are you into her at all?
Oh gosh, no. She's exactly the type of woman I'd walk away from.
Yeah.
Oh no, she seems like a divorcee.
Mm-hmm. We find that we're back with the B plot where Steven hung the dog pictures over Jennifer's bedroom, which is just weird. It's so stupid because it's like he really wants this dog painting. He wants to put it somewhere, but then he starts like putting it in people's rooms for no reason.
And they never once gave us a reason as to why. Because clearly we all think dogs playing poker is a stupid, stupid painting.
Yes.
Why would he buy it? Why would he insist? And okay, I buy it to support my television station. Fine, I'll buy that. Why are you insisting upon hanging it up somewhere like it actually is art?
Yeah, buy it, put it in the attic.
Right.
You've given the money, save it for next year. Right,
give it to somebody at Christmas time as a joke present.
Right.
But it just seems silly to really, and that's what this whole second act, we hit upon this at least once or twice, where he's actually, the payoff joke is sort of funny at the end.
Yeah, and when you get to the payoff joke, and the capper for the whole episode, you're like, oh, that's why they did it.
And it also explains his appearance in the episode, which I couldn't understand from his first little bit, from Skippy's first little bit. I thought, oh, they didn't even need this scene. This scene means nothing.
Right.
Maybe it was the poker scene because of the poker playing dogs.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think of that.
I thought, okay, that's the only reason why they might do that. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Mallory is going to dinner with Nick, and this is where she says she hasn't seen him for 11 days. That's weird.
And she's nervous, and she's flitting around, and she's putting her earrings on, and she's floating on the air. She's so excited. She's going to see her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a phone that rings with, of course, the good news that Nick is canceling because he has to spend the evening with Victoria Hurstenberg. There's another gallery opening. Another gallery opening, Nick. How many fucking galleries are there in Dayton?
Did Mallory graduate yet? Is she in college? No, she's not in college.
No, high school.
So she goes to school all day. Then he's out at night going to parties and things. Right. All right.
Then we have this sort of kind of nice brother and sister scene between Alex and Mallory where she finally tells Alex what's going on and her fears about Victoria and how she's elegant, sophisticated, and smart. And as that scene's going on, it's when I started to think, wow, those writers have no respect for Mallory whatsoever. They make her have low self-esteem for no reason.
Yes, Corey, that's exactly the same thing I was writing down. I wrote, fuck you, Gary David Goldberg, because they are just shitting on Mallory. Like, she has a genuine concern. She thinks that this guy that she loves has been cheating on her, and they make a scene where it's just about how stupid she is. And like, she'll never be better. Like, she's like, this woman is elegant and intelligent and rich. And then Alex is like, well, you'll be older one day. It's just like, that's so fucked up. Like that Alex says that this is the direction that they want the scene to go as the creators of this TV episode.
That they decided that they had the freedom to write anything they wanted. And what they chose to write was a scene of a teenage girl having a moment of real low self-esteem. And her older brother doesn't choose to say to her, hey, Mallory, you're great. You are smart. You're funny. You're talented. You're a terrific designer. You run that store better than anybody could ever run that store. You've got a real fashion sense. You're a terrific younger sister to me and older sister to Jennifer. What a great girl you are.
Yeah, and if this doesn't work out with Nick, it's gonna hurt now, but one day it won't, or maybe it'll work. Like, we'll figure this out.
And they gave them the opportunity for that scene to happen, and instead we had a scene where Alex said, well, you'll be older someday.
Yeah, you're a fucking idiot, so let's all laugh at that fact.
That was the scene. I know, my mouth was sort of hanging open when I start to see Mallory being frustrated, and I think, why can't one of her family members say something nice to her, for God's sakes?
Yeah. It reminds me of, I haven't watched this show since it was on, but in Growing Pains, didn't they make fun of Tracy Gold for being fat, like, on the show? Like, they...
Never watched it.
Okay, well, then in that case, let's not even discuss it. But I feel like
they were pretty... Back 20 years ago, they were fat-shaming somebody?
Yeah, like that. This is all... hearsay and me maybe misremembering, but like that the characters would all be like, oh, you're so fat, quit eating, all this stuff. And then Tracy Gold became famously bulimic.
It's funny, but times, our culture changes so quickly nowadays that when you do watch a show that's 20 years old, there can be something in it that 20 years ago seemed like everybody did it. Now you question, I don't know. It seems uncomfortable given the light of the fact that the world has changed so quickly. I was watching. I was not a huge Gilmore Girls fan, but I was curious about the revival on Netflix. So I gave it a very short look, and realized, okay, I'm trying to figure it out and thinking, wow, when the series premiered, the Lauren Graham character was 32 and her daughter was 16. They were half of each other's age. So there was this really cool mother-daughter quirky relationship that was very cute. Now, Rory is 32 years old and Mom is 48 years old.
Oh, okay. I thought they were going to do 64 and be like, we just don't know how math works.
Yeah. No, that worked. They worked the numbers out. But here's the sad fact of the matter. Quirky banter conversation between a 48-year-old mother and a 32-year-old daughter aren't nearly as charming as quirky conversations between a 32-year-old mother and a 16-year-old daughter. It just doesn't work as well 20 years later. We've seen every quirky conversation they've had. I don't know. I don't think you can catch lightning in a bottle twice. I just don't think it happens that way. It was very weird. I didn't continue watching Gilmore Girls because I sort of felt dated to me. It felt uncomfortable, and like they were forcing everything.
Interesting.
That was once charming is now being forced down my throat and is substantially less charming.
Yeah, that happens, especially with comedy. I feel like with comedy, it's always so much of the time that you're doing, like all these comedian stand-ups that you loved at the time, that when they become like 60, 70 years old or whatever, they just start to lose their cachet, or they can't keep up with changing whatever. And comedy seems to date a lot. Yes.
Well, one of my students said to me in class, she was telling me about one of her favorite comedy films, and it was White Girls. And wow. I thought about White Girls for a second, and I went, I don't think that movie would be made today.
No.
Yeah, I said, I don't think they can make that movie. And she looked at me like I was crazy, and I said, well, you can't make a movie with a white person in blackface. Why would it be appropriate to make a movie of a black person in whiteface? If one is inappropriate, they're both inappropriate. It's a movie that wouldn't get made unless they had a completely different excuse for why they were doing it, and even then it would have problems.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think it's more complex in the one versus the other, like whatever, right. But like at the same time, I think that like running into the face of that kind of politics or whatever, a comedy wouldn't try to do that today. I don't know. Do you?
I just don't think it would. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
we're living in a very politically correct world right now.
Well, I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think it's politically correct, but
that's a best case scenario at this point, as if we were living in a politically correct world.
Politically correct.
Yeah. So maybe with Trump's America, they'll remake Soul Man finally. There you go.
That was Godfrey Cambridge. Is that who that was?
No, C. Thomas Howell.
C. Thomas Howell. Oh, that's right. That was Godfrey Cambridge started a movie called Watermelon Man.
I don't even want to know.
Yep.
I don't even want to know.
Yep. Watermelon Man.
Jesus Christ.
Black actor starred in a movie Watermelon Man.
You've already said too much. It's already.
I think of these things and I just think, oh my God, what kind of world were we living in 30 years ago?
Yeah. That's why art like dogs playing poker can transcend time. The man was born in the 1840s.
And you can still hang a dogs playing poker card up, a picture up, and it would still seem timeless.
It'll tie the room together. It'll tie the family together. The family ties together.
Ah, wow.
Stephen was trying to save the family
with that picture.
Yeah.
Well, we cut to the gallery, and with the gallery opening that Nick and Victoria are at. One of the first words she uses in the scene to Nick is, "Oh, no, thank you, darling," she says to Nick. Yeah, I don't want to telegraph anything to us.
That's the thing, Corey. Like, she's full on trying to, like, seduce him in this scene. What do you think the past 11 days were like? That she's like,
at every one of these openings, what was she about to give him a hand job and something happened and it never happened that way? It's like, and how dull is Nick? What? Don't dumb your characters down this much.
No, for as much as we've talked about over time how intelligent and emotionally intelligent, especially Nick is, this is just pulling him back 300 feet.
There's champagne that's being passed around, and they take 2 glasses of champagne, and Nick goes, "I hope this is free."
Yeah. Hey, I've been there.
Yeah, we wonder, do I have to pay for this or not?
Yep.
And of course, Mallory shows up in the middle of this gallery and starts hiding in various places to observe the relationship between Nick and Victoria Hurstenberg.
And then in one of the arguably funny scenes in this, she gets sort of accosted by the security guard or somebody who's asking her what she's doing there, right?
Right. And
so she's like, they're like, "Oh, are you here to see Tommy Billowy's art exhibit?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, we're best friends." And then it's just this like constant no butting where it's like, where Mallory says, "I've known her since camp." Yeah. And then they're like, "She's 70 years old."
Yes. Yeah. Everything was wrong that Mallory said, where they try and make her seem dumb. And then we get that typical spying scene, which I've unfortunately written myself. It's always when you get tied into a corner where you have to write this scene. The scene where they see something, and it's basically your mistaken identity or your mistaken, I'm totally mistaken. So Mallory's hiding, and she sees Nick and Victoria hug, which is after Nick tells her that he's not interested in her and that he's in love with Mallory.
This is the one moment of truth moment where she says, "Nick, listen, we should get out of here and go bone at my apartment."
Right.
And Nick is like, "Oh, I didn't realize that that's what you were implying this whole time. I'm in love with Mallory, and I really appreciate, and I'm sorry that I just don't feel the same way." And then she goes, "Oh, well, sometimes I let my emotions get the best of me, and I'm sorry about that. Which, in that case, in that one situation, divorced of context, it was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, that's nice that, like,
Uh-huh.
he was truthful, she was truthful, and that they didn't hold anything against each
Right.
other. But in the context of this episode, it's insane.
It's insane. It makes no sense. Right.
No.
Because she was only doing this for boning.
Right. It's not like at the beginning of the episode she was like, this art is amazing, Nick, and then falls in love with him.
Right.
It
Now,
seems like she... Oh, go ahead.
just doing it to get into his pants.
Yes, yes. And so the hug comes because she's apologizing and he's apologizing, and that's what Mallory sees.
Right. And of course, she runs out.
Dun, dun, dun.
As if we haven't seen that happen at exactly the same moment that we now know that the next scene is going to be the Nick and Mallory apology scene, the we can work this out scene.
Of course. But before we get there, we have a crazy scene no one would have predicted.
No way. Skippy, Andy, and Alex all playing poker.
And Andy is kicking ass.
He's kicking ass. He's destroying him. Even though he appears to be eating chips. When I say eating chips, let me clarify. Not potato chips, not tortilla chips, but Andy is actually eating poker chips during the scene.
Yeah, and not once does he make eye contact with either of the two actors.
As a matter of fact, there's a moment at the end of the scene when Alex picks him up and he clearly makes eye contact with mommy or daddy who's standing right off screen.
Yeah.
He looks around. He looks like he's about to start to cry when Alex picks him up. His face goes into the and he turns his head and he stares right at a parent.
I love it. I love it.
who's this far away from the camera. He's so close to being off camera. They were desperately trying to get this shot in.
Mm-hmm. But the scene is pretty funny. It's cute. They're playing. Skippy keeps losing the hands. But then again, Michael J. Fox is doing his baby voice. That's just, ugh. I could do without that.
Mm-hmm.
They have 3 cigars on the table. I think that's a little weird.
They had a cigar for Andrew as well.
Yeah.
And I wrote down at the time that this was just a supreme waste of Skippy, but I didn't realize that he would be back in a moment for the bumper to the entire episode. Right. So really, I think they just found another reason to introduce Skippy here so that he could come back. He needed to be in the Keaton house, to leave the Keaton house, and then return to the Keaton house to make the joke work. So Mallory comes back, and of course she's terribly jealous of, says to everybody or to her mom that she doesn't want to see Nick anymore. And this was sort of cute, where I don't want to talk about it. And then Elise would say practically nothing, and Mallory would then start to talk about it. And then Elise would ask a question about what Mallory just said, and Mallory would go, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And Elise would stay quiet, and Mallory would talk about it, and then Elise would ask a question, and Mallory would go, Mom, I told you I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, this episode is full of very competent, middle-of-the-road sitcom humor.
It is, and that's why we said right at the very beginning, it's clearly in the mediocre class of episodes.
Yeah,
where there's some competent comedy in this. There's moments of competent comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Although not for the rest of the episode now at this point.
Right. There's a moment when Elise talks about that Nick has a lot of flaws, and that Steven has an alphabetized list.
I thought that was a funny line.
Yeah, that was interesting. I never really understand why Steven still hates Nick.
I thought that myself. I said, really? He's still against Nick, who's proven himself to be a good guy?
Yeah. And then Nick says that Nick comes in, and he immediately is like, nothing's going on, and starts apologizing to Mallory, and they apologize back and forth, lots of I love yous, and I thought that Nick, once again, we talked about how progressive Nick is. I thought he did a commendable job as a character in the writing of the character in explaining exactly what he was thinking, where he was coming from, why he's apologizing, and that he loves Mallory so much. And then, she does the same.
Right.
But it just...
Ultimately, it was actually very sweet, and it was just fine. There was a lot of nonsense of running around to get to where we knew we'd get to.
Right.
Nothing surprising.
And then, Corey, do you want to tell us what the end of the episode is?
Oh, so the end of the episode is Skippy comes back in the back door holding the painting of the dogs playing poker, saying, Hey, Mr. Keaton, no thanks. Don't want this over at my place either.
When you say it, it's actually pretty funny.
So apparently Stephen had run over to Skippy's home and hung it up in Skippy's bedroom.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, it wasn't that funny when I was watching it, but thinking about it, it's one of those the week later you think it's funny.
It's like, okay, I'll laugh at that.
Yeah. Anything else before we close up, Corey?
Oh, I don't think so. We could just rip Scott a new asshole.
That's all right. We already did it at the top.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Want to make sure we covered it.
So rate and review our show on iTunes. For questions and comments, you can email us at qualitytimewithfamilyties@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at QTWFT for updates. You can also follow each of us. I'm at Paul Packler.
I'm at Corpep, and Scott's at Follow Jones.
And you can like our page on Facebook. We'd like to thank our host and producer, Barbara Dillon at Fanbase Press. Fanbase Press is a comic book publisher and an online community supporting other creators and fans through daily reviews, interviews, and podcasts that span the pop culture spectrum. Check them out at www.fanbasepress.com. We'd like to thank Perry Adams, who beautifully performs Family Ties and our theme song Without Us. Check out Perry's website, www.perryadams.com. Also, Bryant Dillon, who created our fantastic drawing and artwork as well as edits our show. He did an amazing job with last week's episode. Bryant is the president and co-founder of Fanbase Press. Follow him on Twitter at Comic Book Slayer. Finally, we'd like to thank Sean Foster, Fanbase Press's graphic designer, for designing our logo. Guys, girls, everyone, we'll see you next week.
Sha-la-la-la.
Bye.